Tucson for over 14 years. In that time, he has been a part of creating a disability-inclusive culture, which has resulted in church revitalization, spiritual growth, conversions, and baptisms. Journey Church has become known throughout Southern Arizona as the church that ministers to, with, and from those with disabilities. Jim recently completed a doctoral degree at Talbot Theological Seminary in planting and multiplying healthy churches in North America. His dissertation focuses on the relationship between disability ministry and church health. Jim and his wife Stacy are the blessed parents of 4 and proud grandparents of 1. Welcome Jim with me.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here with you today. In the time that I wrote that bio, we actually have a new grandchild. So now we have 2. Well, it was 19 years ago when my youngest son, Timothy, had his first epileptic seizure at 14 months old. And it was that day that I was baptized into the world of disability and special needs. Timothy's now 20 years old, and a huge part of why I'm here with you this morning. It was only 4 years after that event that I became the lead pastor of the Journey Church in 2009. And I'll just say that Tucson, Arizona is not the easiest place to reach people for Christ, to make disciples, and to grow a church. So if you look at my backstory, yes, a son with special needs, a lead pastor, and in a very difficult place. It was about 6 years into this experience that 2 ladies who happened to be the area directors for Young Life's Capernaum ministry wanted to meet with me to let me know that they were enjoying the church and ask me if we would be interested in hosting a ministry for their young people who were aging out of their program. They said that it wouldn't cost us anything. For me, it was a no-brainer. And when I said, absolutely, when do we start? They were befuddled. They were shocked. Why? Because they'd been turned down by so many pastors in so many churches already. Our Friends for Life ministry began soon thereafter. FFL is our ministry for those with disabilities. But at the same time, we began to explore what it might mean to become a disability-inclusive church. Well, in 2016, just 1 year after that, our church began to experience significant numerical growth, due in part, I believe, to our emphasis on being a disability-inclusive church. In 2018, I began a doctoral program at Talbot School of Theology at Biola University in growing and multiplying churches in the U.S. And as I pondered in that first year what I would do doctoral research on, I wondered if there was some connection between our approach to disability inclusion and the church health that we were experiencing. And this led to my dissertation, which sought to answer this question: what is the relationship between disability ministry and church health? So I did an in-depth case studies on 3 very different churches in Arizona and California in order to understand the answer to this question. Each of these churches had to be, to some degree, disability inclusive versus merely being churches that had a disability ministry. Amos Young explains the difference between these approaches. He says, the goal cannot be just to minister to such people as objects of care, concern, or charity, although such ministry is precisely what is needed in many cases. The goal must be the full inclusion of all and the reception of each contribution, resulting in the enrichment and edification of others. And this approach has resulted in my definition of disability inclusion: ministry with or to, with and from those with disabilities. So, by combining all of the data from these 3 very different disability-inclusive churches, data including congregational survey, church history documents, facilities observations, focus group discussions, and dozens of interviews, a clear understanding of my research question emerged. The convergent data from these 3 case studies led to 10 findings. 8 positive and 2, and I'm putting these in quotes, that means something, 2 negative. So these are the 8 positive benefits of inclusive disability ministry, just following the facts, following the data. The most significant finding in the research is the way in which these churches felt so very positive about their church and its disability ministry. This is what, for lack of a better term, what I describe as positive congregational morale. And you say, what's the big deal about positive congregational morale? Well, first, not only is it not always the norm, but I want you to understand, I did this research in the fall of 2020. You know what was taking place in 2020, a polarized election, racial tensions, COVID shutdowns, a divided nation, and divided churches all over the place. And yet these churches, in the midst of this, what I describe as a dumpster fire, all of these churches had a very high degree of positivity about themselves and their ministries. If I could just pull from one of those data streams and illustrate this, this is a graph that is the combined survey data of all 3 churches, and these are 10 questions, 10 key areas of general church health. And if you see to the right, that means it's a superpower for this church in the perception of those being surveyed. On the other end, on the left, that means like they're really terrible at this. So these were just the attitudes of congregants concerning their church on these areas of church health, like church leadership, vision, worship services, gospel outreach, and the like. This graph is powerful in and of itself. But when we look at the survey data from concerning their disability ministry or inclusive disability ministry, respondents from these churches expressed an even greater positivity about their church's approach to disability inclusion. They believe that the disability inclusion has had a positive impact on their church, helped shape the church's mission, been a positive witness to the surrounding community, and even helped individuals grow spiritually. And let me remind you, again, this is only one of those data streams. Well, this positive congregational morale led me to my second observation or finding, and it's called congregational resilience. Fascinating that all 3 of these very different churches had experienced immense leadership crises in the last 2 to 6 years. And yet I heard story after story of leaders and congregants that stayed at these churches through these seasons of intense leadership turmoil. Why? Why did they stay? They stayed because they believe that the heart of their church was solid. They believed that their church was on point concerning the mission of Jesus as demonstrated by their church's commitment to love, serve, and include those with disabilities. Well, it gets even better. This is number 3. Congregational transformation, specifically as their identity as a church, what the church thought its mission was, but also their worship service culture. Respondents at all 3 churches indicated that their church had been positively transformed from an inward-focused, self-centered church into an externally focused, missionally centered church, due in part to inclusive disability ministry. 2 of the churches described themselves as formerly being country club churches. The 3rd church described itself as being formerly white-collar, highly educated, intellectually focused church. And now all 3 churches are known for being loving, accepting, come as you are, relational, gospel-centered churches committed to serving the Lord in both word and in action. They also talked about how the presence of those with disabilities helped them become less uptight and more expressive in worship services. The lead pastor from the first church said this, and mind you, he is a Presbyterian pastor. And so this is powerful. He says, for me, watching the congregation embrace and be okay with some disruption in worship, to me, that's a sign of complete wonder and joy. And it's everything the church ought to be. It's really changed the culture of our church. Number 4, numerical growth. According to church records and statements from church leaders, a conservative estimate is that 7 to 8% of these congregations are made up of those with disabilities. But leaders of the first and the second church also talked about the reality that each person that has a disability that comes to church typically brings with them 2 to 3 other family members. And not only family members, service providers, professionals who serve the disability community, and people in the community that care about this issue, all are attracted to these disability inclusive churches. So in the final analysis, the actual number or numerical growth of these churches was closer to 20 to 30% because of their emphasis on disability ministry. The 5th finding was this: individual spiritual growth. According to the data from these churches, the presence of those with disabilities helped these churches make better disciples. Time and time again, stories were told of the influence of those with disabilities to help others grow in their walk with Jesus. Each church mentioned joy, unconditional love, acceptance, simplicity, sweetness, enthusiastic worship, and unfiltered communication from those who have disabilities as being a positive influence on the spiritual growth of the congregants. A volunteer from the third church said this: "It's had a profound impact on my life. I mean, the top 3 things that have changed me spiritually. These people have moved me in an amazing way. I mean, they inspire me so much to deepen my faith in Jesus." And then a longtime member from that same church, doubtful that they even know each other, who described himself as a put-together white-collar professional, we'll just call him Jeff, said this: "Brokenness is a part of all of our lives, but there's a lot of Christians who are challenged with integrating brokenness into their own life. We want to project and present a polished version of ourselves. Those with disabilities open a door to having conversations about brokenness." Number 6 was this: individual theological formation. Things like the Imago Dei, grace, or the gospel itself. In interview after interview, leaders and congregants of these churches shared how disability ministry has helped them have a robust understanding of what it means to be created in the image of God, and how this means that all people are infinitely valuable. A staff pastor at the second church, we'll call him Todd, says there's been a growing and more muscular understanding of the sanctity of life. It has really driven home and put faces, names, personalities, and voices to the reality of God's goodness in his creation. Congregants and leaders at these churches also spoke of the ways in which those with cognitive disabilities have helped them understand the nature of faith and the gospel. Tyler was a worship pastor at the third church, and he said, I'll give you the slide there. I think that our friends with disabilities really understand the simplicity of the gospel. You know, a lot of them just know, quote, "I am so deeply loved by the Lord that he sent Jesus for me. So I will just live a life of praise." And congregant after congregant also talked about the power of the presence of those with disabilities to help them better understand a life of grace. Those with disabilities sometimes require extra grace. They are typically excellent at receiving grace, and more often than not, they offer grace to others. Well, number 7 is this: the inclusion of those with disabilities has amplified the gospel witness of these churches out and into their surrounding communities. Events like Tim Tebow's Night to Shine, proms, Christmas parties attract numerous guests beyond the disability community and expose many to the love of Jesus in the surrounding neighborhoods. News of these churches' disability ministry spreads by word of mouth far beyond the disability community itself, sometimes even ending up on the local news. And the positive reputation of these churches and how they love, serve, and include those with these precious souls increases the community's awareness of and appreciation for them as a gospel church. Eric McKitty predicted this when he said this: there are few better ways for your church to share the gospel than with unbelievers than through a ministry to those with special needs in their families. And as they experience your love and care, it will make your witness all the more persuasive, and Lord willing, they will come to believe in Jesus. And then the final, number 8, positive finding, a surprising one: fundraising for ministry. One of the objections that we often hear from pastors and churches is that they simply do not have the financial resources for such a ministry. However, executive leaders at all 3 churches explained that disability ministry is the easiest to raise funds for. All 3 churches did disability ministry very differently, had different price tags attached to that, yet none of them has ever had to cut back or eliminate services due to lack of funding. Another way to say this is disability ministry raises its own support. Now for the 2, quote, negative findings of inclusive disability ministry. Let me just give you the spoiler: disruption and discomfort. The first one, disruption. Those with developmental disabilities can be disruptive in the life of the church. Inclusion has resulted in an increase in these disruptions, especially during worship services. And then discomfort. Simply stated, the presence of our friends with disabilities can initially make some people feel uncomfortable. So there they are, disruptions and discomfort. And I want to just let you know, these are real. This is the price tag of inclusive disability ministry. And while I don't want to sound like I'm pumping sunshine, I also need to let you know the rest of the story, and that is this: that all 3 churches in the end claimed that these 2 negatives have been good for them. Respondents at each church claimed that disruptive behaviors such as getting up in the middle of services, making audible noises, singing loudly off-key are good things that helped positively transform them and their church culture. Concerning discomfort, that those with disabilities can sometimes generate in certain people, the respondents at all 3 churches claimed that not only does this dissipate over time, but has beneficial qualities such as helping people to understand the gospel, see Jesus more clearly, grow spiritually, and help their church become a better, more Christ-like church. David Palin, in his book, A Gentle Touch, just captures this so well. It does not matter that the behavior of some of them may be awkward, nor even that it is disruptive. They are part of the family. And he finishes like this: the church that fails to be the family of God when holiness is confused with orderliness. Disruption and discomfort, yes, yet they have resulted in better disciples and healthier churches. And while there were people at each church, staff members, that felt as if they had lost people over their years of disability inclusion, only one family is known for sure as having left because of the church's disability inclusive approach. On the other hand, what I found was hundreds of people who have joined these churches and have stayed at these churches because of disability inclusion. Well, this has also been our experience at the church that I pastor. We did not launch into disability ministry or become a disability inclusive church in order to get these benefits. We did it because it's the right thing to do. We did it because they are precious. But we have been blessed with these benefits. We are a healthy church because of ministry with them and receiving ministry from them. And our friends with disabilities have become some of our most active, influential, and contributing members of our congregation, and we are better for it. And I believe that this, for these reasons, is church health's best kept secret: inclusive disability ministry. Thank you.